Hey, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may reside. Welcome to the 20, I think we're the 20th episode. That may or may not be correct, but it's about right. 20th episode of the boardroom. Formerly the AI boardroom, now more the boardroom. We're focusing a lot on solving business problems, but AI and automation is a big part of the content. So why do we have this? What is the purpose of the boardroom? Well, we believe that regulated industries need different conversations than the ones that are happening on social media. Not that that content isn't bad, right? But it lacks a lot of substance. We created the boardroom to create an educational opportunity for customers and prospects to be able to come in, talk about, and learn different things around business and technology. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Well, everybody seems like they are getting involved in AI. At the very least, everyone has heard of AI. The buzz is there, right? There's some truth to it. There's some fiction to it. And we want to be able to talk a little bit about how to make sure that running AI in your organization is done the right way, right? The safe way. So today's title is Can't Ban It. You can't wing it, right? And the five pillar standard for managing and governing AI in regulated industry. So we're going to be talking about five pillars. Today is really going to be kind of an overview, a tease, so to speak, on those five pillars. The subsequent boardroom conversations will be deep diving into each one of those. So this is the first one. This is the summary, right? This is talking about all of these at altitude. And the house rules are, please stay through the final slide because the move that I want you to make tonight really is in that last card. So let's go. Now, here's what nobody probably told you, but I'm guessing you suspect, is that your organization is already using AI. Your people are probably pasting client data into ChatGPT right now. PHI, CUI, customer financials, privileged client matters. On top of that, your vendors are quietly turning AI features on inside the tools that you're already paying for, not by any permission that you've given them, right? It could be Slack, Teams, Adobe, Microsoft 365. Nobody asks your permission to do that, right? But these vendors are still turning on these features. Microsoft Copilot probably is turned on in your tenant, whether you actually turned it on or not. Interestingly enough, 92% of small businesses do not know where to even begin with AI. So they don't. Or, well, they don't, AI begins on them. So really, this isn't so much a technology gap as it is a governance gap. To do this effectively, you personally don't necessarily need to learn AI, although I highly recommend it. There's lots of value, but you do need to know how to manage it and govern it. Now, there are, in my estimation, exactly three things regulated organizations can do about AI right now. Two of them lose, right? Path number one, you could ban it. You write the policy, right? Your people do it anyway on personal accounts and personal devices. You'll have zero visibility. Auditors will come in and ask questions that you can't answer. So path number one, maybe not the best. Path number two, which is what a lot of people do, whether that's subconscious or not, is simply open up the floodgates. No BAAs, no vendor reviews, shadow AI, shadow data exposure everywhere. Your cyber liability insurance decides, hey, you know what, you are too much risk, we're not going to renew you. Your regulators hand you corrective action plans that you end up spending, the next 18 months on? I don't know if that's a great path either. Or path number 3, you manage it, you govern it. Structured, yes, right? Named owners. 3 documents, not 30. Monthly cadence and rhythm. And that's what we're really going to be kind of walking through today. AI without security infrastructure is not innovation. It's a liability. Now, here is what governance looks like when you build it as an operating system instead of a binder. 5 pillars: inventory, assess, classify, govern, operate. Inventory. See everything you have. Simple as that. Can't govern what you don't know you have. Assess. Based on that inventory, understand where your exposure lies. What kind of data does your AI tools touch? Classify, because not every AI exposes the same type of risk. Govern. You need to build out your permission structure. Your team wants to do the right thing if given the right guardrails. And finally, none of this is a one and done thing. So it's important that you build a cadence, right, to be able to govern continuously. 5 pillars. Let's walk through them. Pillar number 1. Again, you cannot govern what you cannot see. So we like to start by seeing everything. What are your deliverables? An AI tool register. Every single AI tool, every agent, every integration, sanction or shadow, right? Dates, owners, type of data access, the tier of level of security and risk. The recurring activity really is managing and monitoring for shadow AI, scanning the environment, updating your inventory. We like to suggest that people survey department heads, simply asking your team what type of AI tools do they use, especially those that touch critical information. We ask those questions, they don't ask themselves. And the hard truth is I have never, not even once, run a first inventory pass for a regulated industry and not found at least 3 AI tools that no one documented or knew that they had implemented. It's never happened. Now, at the same time, we like to run a parallel pipeline, right? We call it the opportunity register because not all of this AI stuff is bad, right? We want to make sure that we're leveraging artificial intelligence and automation to help reduce time friction in your business and help speed up and improve your decisions. So we want to build an opportunity register around that, right? For all of the AI builds that you want to add intentionally, but inventory is both acting as defense and offense. And every single month, again, we want to identify maybe there's one quick win, right? One new opportunity, right, that could save your team hours, right? Save your firm money. We use that to update the opportunity register that surfaced from your inventories. Now, I've got episode 2, but essentially it's episode 21, and you're going to see probably that misnumbered throughout. But coming up in the next boardroom, we are going to be deep diving into this, right? The shady side, right, of AI implementations. We're going to be looking for shadow AI, right? How to audit your environment to find out what tools people are using to update this AI register. So definitely want to attend that one. So pillar 2, right, is to know your exposure. Once we see everything, right, once we built out that inventory, ask yourself one question. Where does that inventory expose us and how bad is it, right? I like to focus on 3 sources ranked by reliability. Direct technical inspection, right? You see it, it's installed. You see what data it touches. Second, Vendor attestation, right? Because vendors never lie about their tools, do they? Just kidding. But they can provide a very valuable resource to understand what their tool does and what it touches. And then finally, your self-report, right? Talking to your department heads, talking to your employees, talking to your customers. And the standards that we like to enforce really is that if somebody answers yes to one of these questions, but has no evidence to back it up, essentially that is a no until it's proven otherwise. That single rule changes more outcomes than any tool, right? Everybody wants to live in this this optimistic reality, when the truth is, if it's a no, it's a no until you can document and prove that it's a yes. Every month, you should have a resource, right? Technical resource that's checking on all of your exposure and how bad it is based on your inventory. I like to do quarterly rescores, maybe an annual compliance audit, right? Every new tool that hits your AI register triggers a vendor BAA review inside 48 hours because let's be honest, right? The BAA that you signed with your EHR vendor, for example, in 2019, right, does not reflect what the tool is today. And the reason that small tools wreck your firms, the smallest tools cause the worst surprises, right? It could be that Chrome extension, some free transcription tool, a trial that one of your team signed up for, right? Like you need to assess all of them. Standard annual audit, 0 surprise findings. Everything in that audit should already be in that open findings register. So you guessed it, right? Boardroom 23, we're going to be diving into that AI exposure assessment. We're going to work through mapping exactly where your risk lives with all of the tools that you identified in your inventory. And we'll estimate how much it costs if something ends up in the wrong space. Pillar 3, understanding your risk profile. I think we can all agree that drafting an internal email using AI is not the same thing as summarizing a patient chart, right? Treating the same is how regulated firms get bit. So what are some of the tiers, right, that we try to profile risk? I would say tier 1, right, is your most critical, and that is AI and tools that touch your most sensitive regulated data, right? That could be CUI, that could be PHI, that could be financial records, it could be case data. In context with that, if those tools make high stakes decisions, right? They act, say, agentically. They analyze this really sensitive, important data and then make decisions on your behalf, right? Or has direct patient client customer impact. That's tier 1. With tier 1 data, you're going to want to have a named human owner, right? Not a committee. Committees, you hear the phrase, if everybody's responsible for something, no one is, right? One named human owner. Make sure that you have if you're healthcare, your vendor BAAs on file, right? If you are in other regulated industries, documentation and agreements on what that vendor is responsible for when it comes to cybersecurity, breach, data, and privacy. Monthly performance checkups, right? We'll be talking a little bit about governance, right? But your AI acceptable use policy needs to be crystal clear on how these type of AI tools are handled. Your incident response document, right, is going to need to have an addendum on how these particular AI tools are handled. Because a data breach is not the same, right, as a PHI or sensitive data breach that happens with your own tools. Tier 2, I mean, important, not as critical as tier 1, but operationally important. Here you want to have a departmental owner, right? Because it's typically a department by department tool. You want to make sure that the IT or governance is providing some form of vendor security review, third-party review of vendors. I always recommend quarterly performance checks. Tier 3, personal productivity, right? Not quite as critical as Tier 2, clearly not as critical as Tier 1, but still important, right? These are your productivity tools that your staff is using. Make sure that they are logged, the tools are logged. Make sure that your acceptable use policy has language either allowing or disallowing these tools. Tier 1 must mean something or it means nothing, right? You cannot call everything Tier 1 because that is the most common failure I see, right? It completely devalues the tier and honestly exhausts the team because it's just too much, right? And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can't just assume that everything is safe or personal AI usage. Then you're missing out on a huge risk issue. Predictably so, episode or boardroom 24, we're going to dive deeper into this stuff. We're going to talk about the 3-tier risk model, right? Being able to have an easy process, right, for your team to understand and put those tools into those profiles. Pillar number 4. This is where most organizations start, right? But you really can't start and do anything in this pillar without having accomplished the first 3 first. And when I say that this is where most people start is because it's where you define policies and procedures. Everyone's knee-jerk reaction to when we start talking about governance and monitoring and compliance is, well, we got to write policy, right? Got to write policy. And that's important, but not until you know what you have, what it touches, and what risk tiers it falls into. And when you eventually do get to this step, you don't need 30 dang documents, right? I recommend a minimum of 3. We've got some customers that we have an 8 document rotation, right? But I would say 3 documents, not 30. Build an AI acceptable use policy. Go back to our archives. We actually have a boardroom session where we talked about this and stepped through creating one. The second document really would be a vendor assessment checklist. So one of the things we joke about is how IT compliance and cybersecurity is, has a horrible reputation in our industry, right? We sort of are that broccoli of business technology. Nobody likes us, but everybody knows it's important. And one of the reputation hits that we have is it just takes us too long. We've essentially become known as the Department of No, right? People have this assumption, okay, I have this new tool that I want. Well, we need to talk to IT or compliance or governance, and we just know that they're not going to allow it. They're just going to say no. So how do we become the fastest yes in your business? Well, one of those is to have a vendor assessment checklist. Pre-vetted, easy to understand, every vendor gets it. Turnaround time can be days instead of weeks, right? Build it out. And I think we're going to probably have an episode just talking about how to build out this assessment checklist. But essentially, our governance stack and episode 25, I guess, we'll dive into that. And the third document, when I said 3, not 30, is really and it's some sort of addendum to your incident response plan, because like I mentioned, a cybersecurity breach is not the same thing as AI running amok on your critical data. Second, when it comes to govern in this pillar, you need to name a governance owner. Again, one person, single person name on your side, your team, not a committee. Committee owns nothing. A person owns all of this. Next, I'd like to recommend that you kind of govern this stuff, and we'll go into operate here in a second, but on 36-month roadmaps, right? That allows you to strategically sequence all of your inventory, your assessments, your classifications, and ensure that your policies and your written documents keep up. Governance is not a restriction, right? It is a permission structure. Your AI acceptable policy tells your team what they can do with AI tier by tier. The vendor checklist is that gate that allows new tools to be let in easier, quicker, faster, right? And the incident response addendum exists so that the answer to what if this AI fails is we have a plan to address that. Clients that experience governance as the Department of No will resist it. I always tell people that if it takes longer to get approval to do something the right way than it does to perform the workaround, in every single case, in every single instance, in all industries, people will pick the workaround every single time without exception. But a client who experiences governance as a structured yes, they're going to lean in, right? Because they're going to be able to trust the process, right? That's the say yes premise. And again, we'll be talking about this in more detail on episode 25. Pillar 5, operate. Governance is not an event. It's not a one-done thing. And it's the rhythm that most organizations get wrong. Every month, build an AI health scorecard. One section per pillar, right? Every single month, same time of the week, right? Make it a cadence. Create an advisory call, right? Between the AI governance officers and your team. 30 minutes, right? Build quarterly strategic reviews where any new governance decisions actually get made, right? Your monthly calls execute, but your quarterly strategic business reviews decide. Annually review your entire organization's governance strategies, in particular around AI. Build a review summary and a plan for the forward roadmap. When we provide summary reports, one rule that I believe protects our clients is that anything that we have on an assessment or a scorecard that is red requires a phone call. I don't believe that you should surprise a regulated client with red in writing. Predictability really is what makes governance feel real. A customer or your team that knows exactly when the next touch point is coming will tolerate a rough month, right? A client who has to wonder is going to churn the moment something gets their attention, right? Consistency is key. Governance is not an event, it's a process. Now, I told you at the beginning of this, right, that all of this is really part of a universal core, but that we overlay this on top of verticals. Here's what that actually means. For healthcare, we have HIPAA compliance, where your tier 1 classification is going to be clinical PHI touching, right? Patient records. Examples of that could be some sort of AI scribe in your exam room, right? Some transcription application that's summarizing real-time patient conversations, summarizing reading patient charts. For our DoD customers who are subjected to CMMC compliance, tier 1 could be anything that touches COI, right? Maybe it's the ChatGPT prompt that included a control drawing or another transcription tool capturing program reviews in a face-to-face meeting conversation. How many of you would know, right, if one of your staff had a Plod AI transcription card sitting in their suit coat pocket? Financial services fall under FTC safeguards, and Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, right? So tier one for those organizations obviously are touching customer financial data or internal financial data. Examples of that could be a financial advisor pasting client meeting notes into ChatGPT to make recommendations, or some sort of AI bookkeeping plugin that just added an AI feature, right? How many of you guys are using QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online or any of these accounting systems? Do you know what AI tools that they're adding without your permission? And finally, our legal vertical overlay really is part of the ABA, which is privileged matter or client confidential information, right? So maybe it's a law firm associate running case research through a OpenAI or public LLM. Or it could be a website that has a lead intake bot, right? That's pulling in sensitive information and not securing that data. The point is that it's the same 5 pillars, right? Same operating system. The tier definitions and governance docs might flex per vertical, but it's all the same information. And this is why we built our Protect to Propel framework against any regulated industry, because the organizations that we work with, and many of you are watching, don't simply fit in one box. So what's upcoming? As I mentioned, this is the road ahead. So episode 21, which will be in 2 weeks. I don't have the dates on here, which I should have probably. I apologize for that. We're going to be talking about inventory, right? Mysterious shadow AI, right? How the shadow is already inside your organization. So we'll be talking about how to shine a light on that shadow and build your AI register. Episode 22 is around assess, right? So where does AI touch your audit? Clever title, right? But essentially what we're going to be doing is helping you understand, once you have an inventory of all your AI tools, where do they interface, interact, integrate with your data, especially controlled data, PII, COI, etc. Episode 23, 2 weeks after that, is not all AI is equal. So we're going to be helping you figure out how to classify that AI into your risk tiers, right? Because it takes different ownership and different controls, right, depending on which tier. If everything is tier 1, you're going to burn out your team. If nothing is tier 1, you're opening yourself up for a lot of risk. Episode 24, the stack that holds, right? So this is going to be permission setting, right? So we've already touched on AI acceptable use policies, right? But we're going to be going into those 3 documents a little bit further. And then finally, episode 25 is governance is a rhythm, not an event. Not a one and done deal, right? We're going to help you build a cadence, right, to manage this. This say yes framework, right, where you become the fastest yes in your building, but you're doing it the smart way, right? 1 registration. Hopefully we'll get the registration page, and obviously you'll get the recordings to all this. Now, here's the challenge that I said, if you stay to the last slide, but this is what I want you to do tonight, before this presentation is over. Book some time with me, right? So we have a process called the business growth and risk assessment. It's a 2-part cybersecurity risk and AI growth and profit conversation, right? It's not a pitch. It's not a demonstration. Really, it's just a strategic conversation. We sit down with you. We map out your organization honestly against those 5 pillars. We tell you where you sit, what to do next, right? No charge, no expectation. We found that most organizations learn more about their AI exposure in 30 minutes with us than they did in the last 12 months of trying to figure this out on their own. QR codes on the screen, link out to it, book a meeting with me. Because again, we believe that you don't protect to prevent, you protect to propel. Thank you. Any questions? All right, we got some questions here. First question, will this series be working sessions? Is there anything we need to bring or do in preparation? Um, yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be kind of a combination of theory and action. I one of my biggest pet peeves is going into a presentation or a webinar and not being able to leave with anything concrete. So we'll try to let you do that. And is there anything you need to bring or do in prep? I would say just review this presentation. We'll be sending out the recording. Understand the 5 pillars and how they work together. Uh, if I can't make one of the sessions, will there be recordings that I can watch later? Should I be caught up on earlier sessions before attending the next one? That's another fantastic question. Certainly, if you are unable to attend, there will be recordings. Um, the pillars, the platform are meant to be done in sequence. So certainly by missing one or two, there's going to be an element of prerequisite that you may be missing. That doesn't necessarily mean that you won't find value in attending, but as an example, I mentioned building up the 3 documents under govern. You can't do that without having gone through the first 3 pillars first. How can you write a policy on tools that you don't even know you have, right? How can you write an incident response plan for risk that you haven't identified or classified, right? So I would love to say, yeah, just show up whenever, but maybe think of this more like a somewhat important Netflix series that you'd want to watch from the beginning. Next question. I might be jumping ahead to another session, but do you offer AI training for customers that can be used to train our team? Probably one of the I guess the most asked question that I receive or that our team gets is, can you provide training? Um, so we can train or provide the service of governance, right, as part of our what we call a virtual chief AI officer role, right? Of which we map that to an AI platform to help you save a ton of money and make a ton of money, right? The goal is just to make and save money, but you need to do it the smart way. So we can provide that as a service and help train and get you guys up to speed on those 5 pillars. What you're asking is, can you get trained on artificial intelligence? And that is such a wide topic that is very, very difficult for me to say, yeah, that's simple. What do you mean by AI? Right? AI within your line of business applications, um, public model AI? Are you talking about being able to chat with AI and get answers? Are you talking about agentic where you build agents? Um, so yeah, so that gets to be a little bit more complicated. Certainly, my biggest recommendation is to watch the boardroom and previously labeled AI boardroom sessions that we have on our YouTube channel. Because our goal, of course, is to be able to provide education resources. And sometimes it's difficult to narrow that down, right? Or to be able to cover enough for a specific audience. We did some sessions on basic use of Microsoft Copilot. We've done sessions on how to provide smart prompting to tools like ChatGPT or other chat-based AI tools. We've talked about how our advisory service that we provide includes a platform that we build out agentic agents, in your environment. So being able to say training, that's a little difficult. What I would suggest though, if you have a specific need for your environment, hit that QR code, book some time for me, and let's talk about it. Anything else? And Amber wanted to let everybody know that May 27th is, I believe, the next boardroom. So it's usually every 2 weeks. That's the session that we're going to be talking about inventory. You can't govern what you don't know you have. Building that AI register, your inventory. Any other questions? These are good questions. And certainly it would be nice to figure out a way to be able to train and educate. When a customer signs up for our advisory and platform, as part of the AI growth and profit assessment, we train on how to use the agents that we build, right? So people know how to use it. We provide a cadence for reporting, return on investment, right? How much time you're saving in money. And during that advisory engagement, right, we build out a 36-month roadmap to bridge any gaps in risk and readiness for that in your environment, for AI in your environment. And one of the items is, do people know how to use it, how to use the tools, right? So during that process, we may identify that you need training, and then we work through how to figure out how to get that to you. If there's no other questions, I am going to give you back a little bit of your time. I appreciate everyone attending. I appreciate the questions, and I can't wait to dive into the 5 pillars over the next few weeks. Thanks, everybody.